man, that's wonderful. I love hearing that.
This is a new instrument that's on the block from a guy in Russia, an engineer and a very good drummer himself, and he came up with this. It's kind of a steel. They cut these pedals into it. Buskers like these things because they can play all day in the sun and they don't go out of tune.
Oh man! And this is the Rav drum.
This is the Rav drum, ARV. You can go to YouTube and it's all over the place.
Oh man!
They're pretty reasonable too. They're not overly expensive.
Yeah. Well, this is Terry Corbett. Man, we go back quite a ways now. He's known around Wichita area, probably all over Kansas now. He's probably the most prominent artist who deals with tile, and he's got several, I guess, features around town. He's done the solar calendar here in Wichita. He's had things at Botanica, and I know he's done the water walk. He's had tile work there, and your latest project is it was the art in the art park, right?
Well, it's actually called the Sedgwick County Art Walk.
Okay, great.
So
and he's done that, and I guess I don't know, where do we start? Do we start with your project? Because you're working on a new one, right?
Yeah, there's going to be a new project out there called the Crane Dance at the Sedgwick County Art Walk, so that's pretty accessible, and that's got the broken tile, which is on something I'm pretty comfortable with, and on stone, which I worked with Steve Murillo on that solar calendar in Riverside. I was working on a project for a church, actually. They had a grotto, and they had a bunch of limestone wall, and they wanted an icon on that, and I'd never put tile on stone. And so I thought it would work, and we did it, and it works out great because stone just pulls in that mortar, and it's very permanent. And so, and then I told Steve about that, and he said, well, let's put up a piece in the park. And then it's been a kind of a fun little thing to do because I'm sure it's been done before, but we've never seen it done before. So it's kind of a thing we're just kind of running with. And so this new one should be done in May, and it'll be a fun one to see.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. That's awesome. What inspired you to get into art? I mean, you do music, of course, but what inspired you to start the tile work?
Basically, I took a ceramic class I played tennis at WSU, and the tennis court is right by the ceramic department.
Oh,
it's like, and you just couldn't help but drift over there, And at some point in time, I just took an art class, and I took a ceramic class, and a teacher, Rick St. John, was very good teacher, and really knew his business. And I just liked it immediately, and so I just started fooling around with it. And one thing, as you know, one thing leads to another. That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah. But it's great that you've stuck with it for for so long. But aside from just being a tile artist, I don't know. I really love the tile work. There's this sense of beauty and peace to it. It's
and permanence too. Kind of that appealed to me too, actually.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just been. Seeing your stuff in the solar calendar, and that might have been where I first met you. It was like the opening day.
You played at the opening there, and the one thing about tile, the sun never affects it. It can be outside, and it does not affect it. And that's one of the great little kind of niches. And so that was part of the deal. But I do remember meeting you out there, and that was when we started talking here and there, and just tried different things.
Yeah, and I guess to talk a little bit more about the solar calendar, I think it's an amazing piece. And can you talk about how it lines up with the sun?
Well, the two solstices, the beginning of each season. Sometimes you hear. I'm going to move over just a bit.
Sure.
At each season, you hear people on the radio. Today's the first day of spring, and I said, okay, who decided that? And well, it's been decided by the rhythm of nature, and that and the two equinoxes, autumn and spring, the day and the night are exactly equal. Equal equinox means equal night. So that's what happens. It's a solar alignment. And then in the winter solstice, it's the longest night of the year, and that's probably why they put Christmas there, because Christmas begins the journey to more light, I guess, is one way to look at it. And then summer is the longest day of the year. So there's nothing to, this is just basic 101 science at one level, but I did not know how it worked. And a lot of farmers do know how to work, because they see the field and they can tell right when the sun's going down what season they're in almost. One of the tricks, like on an equinox, if you're on an east-west street, the sun will, like let's say you're going to work, the sun will come down right in the middle of the highway on an equinox. Whether you're in Oklahoma or Omaha or Kansas, the sun will come right down the middle of the street, and that's another. That's another way to chart what's going on. But the fun thing about the whole pattern of the rhythm of the nature is it's how we tell time. It's how we tell time. There's a line on the bridge above when you go on 54 and you're on Kellogg and you're going under the Edgemore Bridge. It says time is the measure of movement. And I used to say, what does that mean? Time is the measure of movement. But we tell time by the rhythm of nature. We think it's the clock. The clock was based on the rhythm of nature.
Right.
And so that's why it's kind of a cool thing to always go back to, because that's how we tell time.
Yeah.
And the other funny thing too, when you're out of the solar calendar, when that lines up and hits the little glass eye, we will have traveled 60 million miles through the course of the year, and it comes back and hits that exact point in space. That's unbelievable if you think about the mathematics or the physics of that. So it's been a really fun project, and
that's what I loved about it is there's an eye on top of one of the stones, and there's a jewel type thing on the bottom.
An eye also.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
eye meets eye.
Yeah. And so when the sun passes a certain area, and it only happens this one time on the equinoxes or on the solstices too, right? On the other stone, or at a different point.
There's 3 different stones.
Yes.
There's the winter solstice. The 2 equinoxes are exactly in the same place. That's why spring and autumn, they feel very similar temperature-wise, because the sun's exactly in the same place.
Yeah, but that was the amazing thing, and it has the dates there. You come to the calendar on this date, and the sun on this certain time. Is there a certain time?
They say local noon, but it's a little misunderstanding. There's misunderstanding there, because local noon is an astronomical term meaning when the sun's at the highest, not at noon. And a lot of people show up at 12, and it's 1:30 actually.
Oh, okay.
In Riverside Park, at 1:30 the sun's at the highest.
Okay.
And except for, because we do our little flip in time, the only thing, the winter solstice is 12:30. So 3 times at 1:30 and 1 time at 12:30, and then you see the alignment.
Yeah. That's what I always loved about it. It's like the order of the universe. You hear so much on a day-to-day basis how the world's in chaos,
right?
And that the universe and this is all just willy-nilly, but. When you look at how structured that is, and this is not just 1 or 2 years that this is going to line up at this time. This is an ongoing. How long has this sun has been gracing this same position?
Stonehenge still lines up. Newgrange lines up exactly, and I think that's one of the reasons back then they all got together, just to remind themselves that there is order.
Yeah.
Okay, everything's okay. The sun's still in the right place. We're the ones who bring the chaos.
That's, and I guess the theme of the show is love and surrender. But how I would tie that in, I think it ties in greatly, is that this world that it's so structured, the universe is so structured, I mean, for me, I believe in of course a higher power and in God and in this higher power, but the fact that there's so much structure in to it, it's the act of like a surrendering, like a mental surrendering to it, other than trying to fight and believe that there's chaos. When you kind of work with the rhythms of the universe, work with the way things are, and learning how to go with the flow of certain things, things start to work out. It's like having faith and trusting in the way that things are, and in the way that God has made the universe, or however you want to approach that. But I certainly never saw everything as chaos, just the way everything works together. And
well, when you look at that, you're almost talking about an art of living, in one level.
Yeah.
The other thing too is now with the Hubble telescope, in Einstein's time, our telescopes could only see the Milky Way. They could not see beyond the Milky Way.
Yeah.
And the Milky Way is huge. And that's the universe. It's so big we can hardly think about it. And then we put up the Hubble telescope and find out there's 1 billion galaxies. It's just shocking. And now they're saying stuff like there are more stars than grains of sand.
Yes.
Okay, Gobi Desert, Sahara Desert, Hawaiian beaches, more stars than each one of those. I mean, this is shocking.
And think about how huge a star is.
Well, how powerful. We have one star and we're not using near the energy that it pours out.
Yeah.
And yet, there's so many of them. It's like the power that shoots through this universe is just shocking. I will tell you this. One time, Sting was on Charlie Rose, and Charlie Rose just comes out. He said, "So you're an atheist, right?" And it's like, and then Sting, it kind of took Sting back a little. I said, "Well, I don't know if I'd say that." And he says, "Now that we see how big the universe is, we're obviously living a great mystery. I'm just saying, I just don't know." And so, but the one thing it struck me is it's a lot more scientific to be an agnostic than it is to be an atheist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
An atheist just shuts the door. A good scientist doesn't shut the door.
Mm-hmm.
Einstein didn't shut the door. I mean, he was always saying
Right.
stuff like, "I want to know the mind of God" and all that. And I think it gave him an edge slightly, just because another layer of imagination or whatever, or faith or whatever, to be open to an idea that he hadn't visited before. But anyway, how can we? And like you're saying too, the precision, the way our world is, and yet, I mean, we all deal with chaos ourselves. I mean, we can barely make bills and all this kind of stuff. But it's good to sit back and say, and like these trees, they kind of know what to do. I mean, or the birds, or the migration, like these little monarch butterflies, they make from Canada all the way to this like 5 square mile place in Mexico. How do they do that? It's just unbelievable stuff. It's all around us. So it's just good to kind of be open to what's going on and to realize we're still learning,
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't mean to change subjects here, but we talked about Einstein and his quotes on God, and we also talked about we talked about how things have changed since Einstein. I'm trying to think where to even lead with that, because we were talking about the way we thought of the world back in the 50s during Einstein's time, and trailing it to the way we kind of see things now. And the thing I stated was, I don't want to be the one to talk about that because I wasn't there. So, so you have a perception of kind of living through it and seeing the way things have happened since.
Well, I was telling Trevor, I just turned 70, so I'm officially an old dude, and it's okay to be. I've told my friends it's okay to be an elder of the village. We can own that. And we've earned it in one level. But also we were talking about. I lived in I remember the 50s and the Leave It to Beaver world, which was the joke about that. As I look back, though, is like we did not know diddly about Jim Crow. I mean, everything seemed like so nice and everything, but there was a whole world that was going on in the South we did not have a clue to. In Kansas, Kansas is a free state, and we do not. I've never seen a separate drinking fountain. Even back then, they had the little trouble at Dockham's, and Kansas is not perfect, but we didn't have that stinging kind of Jim Crow stuff. We missed it. I mean, that was a blessing on one level, but we had to come to that awakening at some point that something's not right.
Yeah, someone was going through it back then.
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly. And
someone was living that.
Well, going through. The other thing too is, as kids, we were shown the atomic bomb. I mean, that was in Hiroshima, and so that was it was in film clips and everything. And I think people in the 50s, they all remember talking about bomb shelters. What would you put in your bomb shelter and all that? And it's like, yeah. So, I mean, there was a specter of annihilation in the background of Leave It to Beaver world.
Yeah.
It was kind of, and people wonder when the peace movement came around. It's like, what do these kids all want peace for? It's like we didn't want annihilation. That's why, and then I think it's transferred over somewhat to the environmental movement. It's like, you wonder why are these kids into all this green stuff and everything. It's like, because they want to have a pleasant life. I mean, they want to have a life with animals in it and healthy food. I mean, people are not asking that much, really. And it's not such a radical idea, frankly.
Yeah.
And it falls under the umbrella of stewardship too. It's like, why shouldn't we care about this incredible creation? That's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but anyway, we just march on and muddle through things, and somehow I think people are starting to understand this stuff a little more, little by little. Just even stuff like healthy food. Who wants cancer? No one wants cancer. And we have to. That's one reason why people stop smoking or something, or even like. If an alcoholic, do you really want to lose your liver? Honestly, there's a point where health has gotten to be a big thing. Who's Howard Hughes? Here's a guy who had $1 billion, and he had some sort of weird disease of some kind, and he lived in a plastic tent with no clothes. He didn't like the way clothes felt. It's like, so what in the world's $1 billion worth at that point?
Quality of life there, I guess.
And some, average person who doesn't have maybe as good a job as they want or whatever, they might be healthy and they're enjoying their family on the weekends. They're going camping or whatever. That's pretty cheap, Yeah. So that's so on one level, it's kind of a. I tell people, like, we're just a bunch of hobbits in the long run. And it's like blessed are, what's the line? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth.
Mm-hmm.
You have a person that has good health, they got quite a gift going for them right there.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, I always saw nature as we're a part of it. I don't know. It seems like growing up, you have this mentality they try to instill in you that you're separate from nature, that you're above nature for some reason, but the truth is, on a physical level, we're just a part of it. We're breathing this air. We breathe out the air. We eat the food. The food that sustains us was once alive at some point, or came from something that was alive.
Right.
So it's this transference of energy that we're just a part of this giant cycle. So
right, and if people don't, let's say they protest against the Roundup and the insecticides, because do you really want to eat poison? I mean, and you think, well, that's an exaggeration. You take a blood test, everybody's got poison in them now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason these bees are dying, because guess what? They're insects, folks. The insecticide.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have pollinators for our food chain. They make up like something like 40%. They make 40% of our food. It's like, yikes. Some of this stuff is not radical. It's just basic, common sense on one level. And that's one thing we were talking about too. The interesting thing about the equinox and the solstice, it ties you back into the rhythm of nature that we actually tell time with, and you also mentioned about how these patterns, to learn how to live with the patterns of nature and life and everything. It's like, and it probably takes us a whole lifetime to learn to do that.
Yeah.
But that's correct. And it's one of the keys to happiness, probably.
Yeah. And I guess from my standpoint would be musical. I try to, for me it's internally, but I like music that does connect with nature somehow. That doesn't feel like, if you're outside and you hear a song and you feel like it connects with nature, there's something about it, and I've always wanted that kind of element within the music, because in a way nature is kind of ties into the spiritual. At least for me it does. There's this a life energy. I guess in India they would call it the pranic energy. It's the life energy of nature that we draw from, and then it cycles around. But there's something about walking through nature and hearing birds and breathing this heavy oxygen of trees that is just, it's empowering. It gives you energy, a clearer mind. There's hardly a day I don't go through Oak Park just to walk through that trail.
Yeah.
So, and it just really kind of levels us out. But
that Dr. Andrew Weil, who this guy was cum laude Harvard, MD, and he gets out and he doesn't like what he sees. He says it's all about the cure and nothing about the prevention. Yeah. And he did a whole study about the prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And he said everybody needs to go on a news fast a couple of times a week anyway. Just don't look at the news. I mean, it stresses people out. And the other thing too, he says, go out into nature. Just sit there in a park or sit there in your car in the park or something. Just it's amazing the stuff you see too. Even watching the geese or whatever, it's it's actually very entertaining. It's enjoyable, and I think we're calling some of this stuff like stress management. We talked a little about meditation and well, again, I'm going to give them your great line that he told me once. We were talking. Trevor and I were talking spiritual stuff once, and he says, well, as I understand it, prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening to God. I said, that's a good line, because the truth is we don't listen. I mean, a lot of times I think people, they pray and like, okay, here's the list, God, blah, 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 blah. Oh, we got that? We clear? Okay, I'll get back with you on that. Boop, go.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, it's like, is this like your servant boy or something? It's like, and we don't listen. Mm-hmm. And part of the thing with meditation is just to quiet the brain down and just listen. And that's what one thing about nature is, just when you take a walk and you hear natural sounds, all of a sudden you get ideas. I mean, I get ideas out like crazy out there. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, well, and that's, you can't have a conversation if it's just one side talking. And we talk about having a relationship with God, but how can you if you're not listening? I mean, you have parents or friends or children. Don't we talk to them and they talk back to us? In order to understand each other.
As hard as it is, we have to listen just a little. That's true. But that's part of music too, though. We were in a group together called Earthlines, a wonderful experience, and we really had to listen to each other, because for one thing, we were making it up as we went along. Most of it, I mean, we had a theme to work with. It's like jazz, you have a theme, and then you go ahead and improvise.
Sometimes we didn't even have that. We just go and start playing. That was it.
That's true. But it really relied on people listening. Mm-hmm. And you have to play also. It's almost like the same thing. There's playing and there's listening, and kind of you have to combine it all. And a good musician can do both at the same time, really.
Yeah, but that's what I like about a musical conversation is it's not based in the material. You can go up beyond our own. We're talking in English right now, but the musical can go in a different direction. So that's why I just love musical conversation, and everyone can talk and hear and receive and
when it's done right, it's a wonderful experience, even for the listener.
Back in the day when we started the group, you hit me in the head with this, not literally, but we were talking about intention, and there's this old quote that's the best intentions are I don't what is it? It's I don't agree with it.
Right.
It was the best laid.
Best laid plans of mice and men oft go astray.
Yeah,
that's one of them.
Yeah, but
and the other thing I think they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah,
but it is true about the best laid plans of mice and men oft go astray. And
but but you said that that's absolutely not true, because those aren't the good intentions. Then if the road to hell is paid for that,
then the intentions weren't good.
And I think that was the basis of how we were able as a group to communicate so well, as of course the musical level of listening, but beyond that, you really have to have the same intention. We kind of had the same intention of enlightening the listener, of course we're involved in that too, or something to bring peace to the listener. I think intention, so this is not only about music, it can also be about working as a team or as a group,
right.
having the same intention,
right.
and not just,
right.
getting together and jamming, or just, it was about getting something out of playing, but we all had the same intention.
Well, and even on another way to look at it too, if a team has a goal, of course, a goal can be defined in many ways. I mean, a person say, yeah, we want that, but I also want a little extra. I want this on the side. I want this on the side. I want,
whatever, You've been in a group before, haven't you?
But I learned teamwork from athletics.
Oh, well,
you really have to know how to communicate, and you have to be on the same page somehow. And we were on the same page. I mean, all four of the people were they were good folk. That's part of it too. And we know we weren't gonna make $1 million or anything. And we actually just enjoyed playing the music together, because all our instruments, and that was to your credit too, you understood how the different instruments were fit with each other. And so it was a rare time. One time we played at the Winfield Festival, which was amazing to us. We were kind of a world music group, but they liked our natural sound, and boy, it was one of those things that everything jived great. The audience was with us on it, and sometimes there's liftoff.
Yeah,
there's rare moments. There's liftoff, and that is so cool.
That's really the goal, is when you get to this kind of floating place, where it's kind of just going on its own, and it's beyond your logic, and you can't explain it. But I mean, but that ties in with the listening and the intention and being intuitive, of course.
Right.
Intuition, such a blessing that we have, and that's part of the listening.
Right.
The listening part of the meditation is when you receive those messages, you're receiving kind of through the same channels as your intuition, as how you would receive your intuition. It's like, oh, don't go that way. It's kind of that same voice. Or if you're walking down a street and you have this bad feeling, it's like, well, maybe I'll go this way, and then later you find that there was something tragic that happened. So it was kind of the same part of listening, the same tools that we have of listening. So.
And part of with teamwork is that obviously you have to deal with the ego, and that's the thing. A good listener has learned to put aside their ego just to cage that dog for about 2 minutes while I hear what this person's going to say. I mean, it's like, and that's part of with the band. No one had a big ego thing, actually, and that made it so much easier. But and let's say in basketball, here we are in March Madness, and the Shockers are still doing good in the NIT and everything. They have to be going beyond themselves to do this, and that's one thing a coach does, is that he has to show those guys, you got to listen to each other, and you got to pay attention, and you can't. It's not all about you. And I mean, that's what, even from children. When we have a little granddaughter, and we have a lot of, we have about 6 grandchildren, and that business of learning to share. I mean, that is a big one with people, and that's what you're talking about. Also, if you have a group that are willing to share, you can come up with some pretty good stuff.
Absolutely. But even aside from that, in dealing with humanity on a daily level, as we all do, and it's kind of harkens back to what I said about nature. Seeing everything, we're a part of nature, and so I also see everyone on the earth is kind of a big team, even though we don't. And it's hard to see that sometimes, because we're all in this ball together, this tiny little ball, and we're all in it together. And sometimes it's very hard to, or some days it really challenges that. But
you almost have to be creative to sustain that vision.
It is.
Okay, we're all on the same team.
Yeah, I know. Well, we have different positions within the team,
That's right.
And that's difficult to do, but we're all here to experience. I believe that we're here to experience the earth because we're here to learn something and to grow.
That's pretty basic, I'd say. The other thing too, despite all the religious differences and everything, most people would agree they could accept the idea we're children of God. I mean, for the most part, people could accept that thought, and that's one place to start. Humankind's a tough one though, because again, the big problem is we're trying to learn about love because according to John, God is love. If the Creator is love, that's the essence of it. Basically, we're trying to join that team. But in order to have love, you have to have free will and you have to have choice. You can't force a person to love. And right. It's in that, and while people are waiting to learn that lesson, that's where the chaos is.
Yeah.
And even in our own lives, it took me a while to get some of this stuff. I hit the wall, and hurt people along the way too. I'm sure, I was stupid. I mean, we all go through this kind of. It takes a while to learn what's going on.
Yeah. If we're here to learn, then we learn through our mistakes, and and we learn that. That feeling bad when you do something to someone else, like, well, maybe I should do something, maybe do it differently this time.
I should change, really? Me? It's like, moi?
Well, and you said we're kind of here to learn love, and I guess the whole purpose of the video is, and our website is, to find that if God is love, and Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. Then really we're created out of love if God made us that way. So in the essence, when we can kind of eliminate the ego stuff about us and the things that we think we are and our attachments to the earth, and when we connect to our inside and we have that surrendering time to God, that's when we can discover love. So that's kind of the whole thing. So but you kind of already talked about that just a little bit, but
well, another way to look at that,
being children of God,
Well, you hate to say it, but it's the only game in town.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to tell anybody, but really it's the only game in town. I mean, as much as we can think we can invent something, it's still the only game in town. We have to that's part of the deal.
Yeah, nothing new under the sun.
No, that's true.
That's the real game.
That's true.
So...
Well, it's a journey. That's I always keep coming back to that we're all involved with a journey, and we're all involved with a personal journey. I think the Creator wants everybody to have a personal journey. So it's not, and that's fair enough. It's just we just have to deal with a zillion journeys.
There's a lot of journeys out there. Yeah.
So.
Man, well, thanks so much for being here. And thanks for this. We're gonna, we'll do some music part. We'll do a music part of this, and this music part, we talked about intention of music. This music part is for whoever's watching, for whoever's listening out there. So this music's directly for you, and to hope that you have, with the intention of peace. And happiness and find that love within you too. So I'm going to shut up now. Thank you very much for being here. We're at loveandsurrender.com.